Hey, Allison here from Learning at the Primary Pond. Today I am so excited to have teacher Kristi here with me. Hey, Kristi.
Hi there, Allison.
Thank you so much for being here. Kristi teaches internationally, and she's actually taught in multiple schools across the world. So I'm super excited to chat with her and find out more about how she got into this and what her life is like in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. All right, Kristi. So why don't we start by just having you tell everybody maybe just a little bit about yourself and what your current teaching position is.
So this marks my 24th year as an educator. My career started in California, but I am currently teaching in Malaysia at an international school, teaching kindergarten. And this is actually my second year in a full kindergarten program. I've taught everything from all grades up until grade 12, if you will, and I've also taught literacy resource and yeah, I've been a homeroom teacher now again for 2 years.
Awesome. How do you like being back to that in kindergarten?
Oh, I'm really enjoying it. I enjoyed being the literacy support teacher for a number of years, but now I get to have the same children
It's
all
nice.
year, and it's
It's
kind of,
nice to have your own class. Yeah,
yeah,
I do miss that,
it
and I
is.
love kindergarten. Yeah, awesome. Well, why don't you tell me and everybody else what your school is kind of like paint the picture for us of what it's like to teach at your particular international school.
So my international school is in an area of Kuala Lumpur called Mount Kiara. We are a school that is pre-K 3 to grade 12. We have almost 60 passport nationalities at our school. And the school itself runs basically the same as any elementary, middle, and high school, only we're on one campus.
Gotcha.
We have the PYP, the MYP, and the DP program. We have multiple languages spoken on campus as well as taught. And yeah, it's just kind of an eclectic group of people that come to this school.
Awesome. So is it a private school?
It is, yes, it's a for-profit school.
It's a for-profit
So
school.
we do have we're family owned and have been for the 20, I believe the school is in its 26th year of operation, and it's a family owned school.
Awesome. So for anybody who doesn't know, the PYP she was mentioning is the primary years program of the International Baccalaureate program. Did I say that all right? And
Yep.
then
Yep.
MYP is middle years, and I don't know what DP is. Diploma? Is it diploma?
The diploma program. Yeah,
All right,
diploma
diploma
program.
program. 2 out of 3. So you mentioned monkeys in the email. I guess what I'm curious to know is, I mean, yes, about the monkeys, but what is different? What's the same between your school abroad and like what you say an average school would be like, maybe in the US or Canada, if there is an average?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the makeup of the school would look similar to what any school in North America would look like. You know, where our classrooms are set up the same, the play structures are the same. We have a cafeteria, canteen, we have theater, we have gymnasium. So the makeup, the facilities are the same. The things that you might find are different would be one, the food that's offered in our canteen would be very different from most because Kuala Lumpur is a Muslim country. We are pork free in our school. And on most days, you will find a variation between Western and Asian food because of where we're located. The other thing is our school was built in what is called Bukit Kiara, and Bukit Kiara is a rainforest,
Oh,
and the monkeys are on campus. So currently we have a troop of monkeys, and we have a daddy monkey that comes and visits our kids, and oftentimes will steal the soccer ball of some of our students while they're playing soccer.
that's so cute.
Yeah, so we, in most schools, we have fire drills and we have evacuation drills and we have lockdown drills. We oftentimes have to have monkey drills to remind the students what to do if they're on a playground and a monkey does approach them, and what not to do. So if you're curious and you see a monkey on the street, which we do, walking to and from school, we will see monkeys. And you just don't show a monkey your teeth, because if you do, that monkey thinks you're aggressive and will try to attack you.
I'm really excited that I'm learning this too. I didn't know that.
On a side note as well, in addition to monkeys, a few years back, after spring break, we have a 25-meter swimming pool on campus because our students take swimming at school. And we found a 12-foot boa near our pool. And so that would be another thing that we have here in the rainforest. It's not really the rainforest because I also live amongst high rises and streets. And so it's a very modern area, but because we are built where we are, we run into those. And currently at our pool, we have a monitor lizard, a large monitor lizard that has made its home there as well. So those are the kinds of some of the safety hazards we have at our school in Mount Chiara.
That's amazing. It's just so funny to picture like a normal school and then there's a boa constrictor and the monkey. It's like
it makes the school day interesting.
For sure. Although I am a little bit glad to say that at my school I don't have to worry about, we don't have a pool, but we also don't have boa constrictors.
Or probably monitor lizards or monkeys. So.
No, we're pretty much animal free. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. So what do I want to talk about next? I guess I'm curious to hear a little bit about like what compelled you to teach abroad and like what keeps you there, because you said you were from California and your husband is from Canada, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Right. So like what do you love about this whole like teaching abroad experience?
So when I first started this journey 20 years ago, it looked like, oh, I'll do anything for a couple years. And those 2 years turned into 20. I love the day-to-day adventure. The nothing is the same. When I walk onto campus, teaching the day is not usually the same. So that part really wasn't different, but the meeting of the people, the meeting of the cultures. I love the fact that I have 3 daughters as well, and all 3 of my daughters, well, this is their home. They are truly nomads in the fact that they travel the world with their parents and get to meet new people and see new things. And the only thing that kids at my school and in this community have in common is nothing. We all come from somewhere else. We all bring something interesting to the table, but unlike I can compare it. We were living in Canada for 3 years in between this, and because I looked Canadian and I spoke the same, and everyone just assumed that I was from Canada. Here, there are no assumptions. Nobody assumes that you know anything about the other person, and that pretty much makes everybody the same when they come into school.
Yeah, that's cool. Very, very different from here where there's just a lot of assumptions about if you look a certain way, then, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and those are kind of, it's amazing what can happen when you take children from a Scandinavian country and put them in a classroom where no one speaks their language, and yet the power of play trumps that language barrier, because they may, like themselves, in a class of, I have 14 students, I have 11 different languages spoken in my classroom.
That's nuts. So all you're teaching them in English, of course. And
Yes.
how is that at the beginning? Because they probably really don't know what you're saying for a solid couple of weeks or months, right? At the beginning of the year.
It is. It's in kindergarten especially, we're building their oral language. So it's a lot of play. It's a lot of acting. It's a lot of being very boisterous with your hand gestures and those things. So all of that stuff that you learn in teaching in the EAL classroom comes into play, but then some, because the children actually find ways to communicate with one another. And by watching them communicate through play, I've learned ways to teach them.
That has to be really interesting to see. I've taught mostly English language learners, but we all spoke Spanish, so we had that commonality. That just adds like a new layer when there's so many different languages, and I'm sure the kids are really creative.
They really are. The two children in my class who started the year, neither one speaking English. One's home language is Swedish and Danish, and the other one home language is Korean. These two boys became instant friends because they played together. They had no language, but now they speak English, and you would never know that they came in not knowing the language, because that's that full submersion into the language that they have to, people call it immersion, but you're basically drowning in the language.
That's true. That's a good way of putting it. Very true.
Don't mean to offend those, but you are.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. Those kids are tough and smart, and they adapt. It's amazing.
So what's kept me doing this and not going back is basically the balance of life. My life work balance living overseas is amazing.
Really? Okay, tell me more about that, because that's always a struggle for me.
So I left California having taught all subjects in a self-contained classroom with no specials. So I taught PE, I taught music, I taught computers, I taught all of that, and a class of 35 students. Ooh. I currently teach with a full-time assistant. I have a maximum class size of 16 in kindergarten, guaranteed. And I have at least 2 preps, if not more, a day.
I like the sound of
that. My workload is nowhere near what that workload was in North America. And I'm able to enjoy my holidays. And we, unfortunately, or fortunately, we have a lot of holidays as well.
That sounds nice. I'm just drooling over here. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. The other things is because I'm at a for-profit school, the money coming in a lot of times goes back into the school, although much of it goes to the owner as well. It's his business, and we understand that. But in my kindergarten, I'm one-to-one iPads. So I'm able to do a lot of things in my classroom, and the money time does not come from me as a teacher. The school pays for that.
That's really interesting, because I feel like I have worked for I've worked for for-profit schools previously, and I've seen like some downsides, but the way you're explaining it there, like for this particular school, it sounds like it really works. So that's interesting.
It does. And I have my 3 daughters attend the school as well, in grade 5, and I have twins that are in grade 2. And the amount of activities that they're able to do and I'm able to be soccer mom and teacher and all of those things. It's actually not soccer, but I get to do
Football.
the badminton and the basketball
Oh.
and the all of the swim team and all of that. And my husband as well. He's a grade 4 teacher. We go to school together. Oftentimes we see each other throughout the day, and so I would love to say that there's no stress, but I feel less teacher stress burnout teaching overseas than I ever did teaching in the States.
That's awesome. I think I've heard somebody else say that too, now that somebody else who taught in maybe China or Japan or something say the same thing. So that's good to know. It's interesting. What would you say is maybe most challenging about teaching at your school, or, it could just be teaching in general?
It's always, that's kind of a heavy question, because I think teachers would all agree if we could get rid of what happens outside of our classroom and just focus in our classroom, life wouldn't be so challenging. Yeah. It's the curriculum swing, it's the resources, it's the new, what's coming in, let's do that, let's change it. It's not broken, and what's working in my classroom is great and kids are learning, but it's a lot of that kind of stuff that makes the day-to-day teaching challenging, whether you're overseas or not.
Yes.
It's the bureaucracy that comes with the job. It's the paperwork. It's the it's all of the above. It's the same stuff that you would have there. Same things. Here we have kind of an added challenge is understanding the demographics of the parents and where they're coming from, because the demographics of the parents are from and the cultures that they bring in. Yeah. The way that I was schooled and the way that I went to teachers college is not going to be the same as the way they understand school to be. And the way that things are presented to their students, the methodologies that are used are definitely foreign to those that are foreign to our school.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of along those lines, have there been any, either at your school now or another school, have there been any big cultural differences that you had to adjust to, maybe in in terms of family expectations versus the school, or just you relating to them? Has anything challenging or just something that surprised you, has anything like that arisen?
Yeah, actually it has, and the biggest cultural challenge I found was my first overseas post was in Cairo, Egypt. And it was my first introduction into the Arab world and understanding the dynamics of how the culture works. And at first it was hard. I'm native Californian. I grew up in the Central Valley. I'm not used to I'm not used to an abrasive culture. And that didn't just happen in the classroom, but that was living as well. And that's one of the things I think the challenge is at first is teaching is the easy part of living overseas. It's learning how to live in a new climate and new culture that's difficult. But once it took me a few months to figure out, well, this is just how things work here, and I'm not going to be able to change it. So it's either adapt or go back to where I know. And I wasn't willing to go back, so I adapted.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've obviously adapted again and again and again as you've moved.
Yeah, and what I think is great about having a family in this kind of, raising a family in this lifestyle is the fact that is one of the first things that my children have to learn is how to adapt. Because of where we travel to, the food that you're going to get, you may not know it. So you're going to have to try it, or you're going to have to go hungry, those kinds of things. And really that's kind of what we all, the biggest challenge is accepting the fact that things are not going to be the same.
Yeah, but that's like such an amazing education for your own kids, that they have to be adaptable and learn about other kinds of people. And not all kids get to have that experience. Not many kids get to have that experience. So that's amazing.
Right.
I love that. So kind of along the same lines, are there any specific ways that you see your students in your classroom benefiting from that super diverse, makeup that you have? Like, are there any ways that you see them learning from each other, or like that has to be just like a really rich environment. So I'm just curious how that benefits them.
Yeah, sure. It's differentiating at its best, because you'll still have your academic high students, and you'll have your academic low students, and you have your social and emotional behaviors, and all of those things. They cross cultural lines.
Mm-hmm.
But because the approach to that may be different, and the way that the student's mom, it presents itself more in the upper school, in upper elementary, because those kids have been taught a different way of doing math.
Mm.
You have the Korean way of doing math. Well, now they're in an environment where they're learning how we're teaching it. But wait, their way is not wrong. It's just different.
Yeah.
So there's an allowance to bring that to the table. And so there's an acceptance and a risk-taker factor in the fact that I'm going to present the way I think, and now that might change your thinking. And that happens every day, all day long.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember, one of the things in the PYP is being a risk taker, right? Am I remembering that? That was like a decade ago. I remember that. Yeah. So that's like amazing that your kids really get to live that out. And yeah, I see what you mean with it being more with the older kids who maybe have had like other school experiences, being able to bring that. That's awesome.
One of the other learner profiles in the PYP is open-mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes every day with our students. They have to be opened to allowing themselves the opportunity to stop and listen to somebody else, because that may change their thinking. So really doing all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. How long do your kids, or your students rather, do they usually stay at that school? I'm just curious about the transients with them.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So most international contracts, most expat contracts are anywhere between 2 and 4 years. And depending on the company and, of course, the employee themselves, whether they want to stay on or not. I have families who have been here 7 years. I have families who have been here 10 years. I have families who the father has changed companies so that their kids can stay and finish out school here. So really, it's anywhere between 2, 7. If they stay longer than 7 years, then they've become very local, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of like transients even with the, kid population too. Do you see, would you say like a difference? And I know it's been a while since you've like taught in the US, but do you see a difference in the kids in terms of their flexibility? Because kids who are, they've lived in the same town for their whole lives and they've gone to the same school. Do you see like greater ability to adapt to change and things in your students?
Yeah, especially as they stay in this type of setting for longer periods of time. Our kids are a lot more resilient.
Yeah.
A lot more resilient. Yes, it's been a while since I taught in the US, but going back, and I have, friends and things that are still teaching there. And our students, I have one child who's 6 years old. This is her 4th country.
Wow.
So, we've got a child who she's been to 4 countries, and none of those are the country in which the language of home is spoken.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be you have to be flexible. You have to be able to, that resilience of going from, okay, so it's not going to happen today, you know. In Cambodia, when my husband and I taught there, again, an international school with 50 different passport nationalities, one of the things that we didn't have control over was the electricity. And so the electricity would go out. And our students, that just became, okay, we're going outside today to teach. We're going here to teach. And they're kids whine. All children do. It's across cultures. That's not going to change. But what changes is how long that happens. And the fact that, okay, this is just what we're going to do right now. It rains every day at 3 o'clock dismissal. Whether it rained in the morning or not, you can guarantee we live in the tropics. We live in a rainforest. It's going to rain every day at 3 o'clock. So what do? You always pack an umbrella. You're just prepared for that. Can you complain about it? No. Do they? Of course they do. They're kids. But at the same time, they're going to walk home in the rain.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I love that. I love that added layer of education that goes way beyond just, the learning to read and write and do math. And I love that. I think it's so valuable. Well, this has been awesome. I do have one last question for you in case we have any teachers who are watching that are considering, maybe teaching abroad, living abroad. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom that you would kind of give them?
I didn't get that. It went out. So sorry, One more time.
So I was wondering if we have any teachers watching who are considering living abroad, teaching abroad. Do you have any, pieces of advice or wisdom to share with them?
So if you are in the boat where you're thinking that you want to try something new, try it. Most international programs at schools like I teach at, the initial contract is 2 years. Mm-hmm. We have teachers, you can take a sabbatical from your job there. You can take a leave of absence. You can guarantee your position. Then go take a job overseas for 2 years, see what happens. I know many people who have done that and never gone back. I know some people who have done that and gone back, and they chalk that up to experience. To me, your life is only enriched by the experience that you have. Mm-hmm. So if you are on the fence and you're thinking, should I do it? No, I can't. Take the plunge.
That's awesome. That's great advice. And I love that it doesn't have to be that way of thinking. It doesn't have to be something permanent. You try it, see if it works for you, and then you can always go back. All right. So now I want to teach abroad.
Well, if they're interested, there are ways to do it. And I'd be happy to share those ways with anybody who is curious and would like to know.
Awesome. So if you're watching this on my blog, then I guess, Kristi, is it okay if they leave a comment and then I can share that with you if they have a question or something along those lines? Awesome.
I'd be happy to answer all questions. And, yeah, for sure. This is the best decision I ever made for multiple reasons, and I would be happy to answer anybody's question who's thinking about doing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You've been so generous just with your time and your willingness to answer questions. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate you giving me the time to share my story and to share what it's like to teach where the monkeys live.
Can you send me a picture of the monkeys? Because I just really want to see them.
Sure, absolutely. I will make sure that I send you lots of pictures for sure.
Thank you.
You're most welcome, and for your time.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who was watching. I appreciate you, and let us know if you have any questions in the comments.